Saudi Arabia and Iran reached an important agreement. I think this is a victory for dialogue, a victory for peace, offering significant good news for today's turbulent world. Epic changes coming hard and fast now in two stories your mainstream media is not telling you much about. First, Wang Yi's announcement of a deal. He's helped negotiate between the Saudis and Iran. Also, America maxes out its credit card as Silicon Valley Bank goes under, the bank of big tech. If some Western leader had negotiated this week's historic negotiated peace deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran, you would be hearing about it 24/7. There would be people being nominated for the Nobel Prize, and it would be wall-to-wall coverage of a huge global triumph for peace, which would herald a sea change in the fate of the Middle East. You're not hearing about it. That doesn't mean it's not real. You're not hearing about it because they didn't negotiate this. Russia has played a quiet role behind the scenes, uncelebrated for political reasons, but it was China who held hands between these two nations. A terrific achievement which heralds peace for the entire Middle East. In fact, this deal was cemented late last year when Xi Jinping visited Saudi Arabia to meet with Mohammed bin Salman, and those negotiations resulted in today's outcome. Make no mistake though, this is not just about agreeing to reopen embassies and revive ties. That's the public announcement. This is an agreement which goes far, far deeper. This agreement actually ends a schism in Islam which goes right back into the heart of Islam itself. A schism between the Shia of Iran and Iraq and the Sunni of Saudi Arabia and much of the rest of the Muslim world. And what's being announced is only the tip of the iceberg behind the potential that's offered here. Here you see in the dark blue the Shia nations of Iran and Iraq and the Sunni Saudi Arabia, and down here at the bottom Yemen, a disputed territory which has been the subject of conflict between Saudi Arabia and Iran, using Yemen as a proxy. In fact, it's not the only proxy, as you see from this map here. Proxy conflicts between Iran and Saudi Arabia are across Africa and the Middle East, and this is key to resolving those. If it does, it will create a zone of peace which will extend from Afghanistan through Libya to Morocco, down to Niger, and all these conflict zones. Truly a historic breakthrough and a sign of the times we're in. Neither of these countries has stepped down this road without already knowing the destination the road is leading to. So the unannounced portions of what's just happened include the fact that Iran will be giving up its nuclear development program. It will be doing that because it's now going to come under a new security umbrella for the entire Middle East region, which will be guaranteed by China and by Russia, because this is part of a Brics structure. And the Brics nations have grown far beyond Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa to include about 60% of the world's population, including Turkey, which is now aligning itself with Russia and China. You can see that this does leave Israel rather isolated in the Middle East, rather than in the position of playing the Saudis against the Iranians, which it was able to do before, and it leaves Western influence confined to Jordan, Lebanon and Israel in the Middle East zone. And as a result of all of this, Saudi Arabia and Iran have agreed that they will not interfere in each other's nations, that they're essentially agreeing to coexist now rather than to compete for who's the big dog in the Middle East. That is an epic outcome, not just for these two nations, but for globally Islam. And this is a stake in the heart of the globalist vampire. This is a fate it deserves. It's been defeated militarily in Ukraine. It's now clearly defeated geopolitically in the geopolitical shift that's occurred concurrent with that war in Ukraine. And now let's turn to the bankster gangster land and what's happening to New World Order financials.
There's nothing wrong with this bank. This bank failed because they didn't fully understand the implications of the Fed's actions, especially quantitative tightening. And now, a good bank is gone. This shows you the downside of quantitative easing, the destruction that the Fed's reckless and insensitive policies are causing.
Chris Whalen there with Jack Farley on Blockworks, because the question is, what did this bank do wrong? What did it do so wrong? Was there some guy embezzling stuff? Was there some crypto thing they were putting money into that didn't work out? No. They had bought US government guaranteed zero risk securities. The problem is that the Federal Reserve has been raising interest rates at an aggressive rate over the last year. And that's just causing the system to break, and in ways that has not been anticipated. So here from Market Watch are 20 more banks that are in the same kind of trouble. And you can go out and short these banks now, and I'm sure people will be shorting these banks from Monday morning. So this thing is spreading. It's not going to stay in Silicon Valley. The contagion has already spread to the Bitcoin, stablecoin and all that market, because Circle, which is involved with USDC, one of the largest coins, has broken its peg to the dollar. Normally, you can rest assured that USDC is equivalent to the dollar. However, because they had a lot of money tied up in Silicon Valley Bank, they had to break that peg. They say they'll be able to fill that hole, but this is how contagion spreads. Over in the UK, they're already worried about it because they have a branch of Silicon Valley Bank over in the UK, so we need a plan for Monday, they're saying, in order to make sure we don't get problems on Monday. Well, it's good that we're over in the UK, and while we're over here in the UK, let's just recall the fact that in the UK they had a bit of a problem with the bond market having a revolt against their fiscal plans recently. You remember that, Liz Truss's fiscal plan that didn't work out, that ended up Rishi Sunak came in. Of course, there's a real story behind why all that happened, but the essence of it is that the time when you could just get away with anything and the markets would just go along with it seems to be nearing an end. And that end of the rope has already been reached in the UK, and now we're seeing the same in the US. This is the credit card maxing out, folks. Here's Chris Whalen again on Blockworks.
It's just like the 1930s, okay? There's no difference. The only difference is the Fed has caused this problem because they are not sufficiently tuned in to the financial markets. After 2008, the Federal Reserve Board basically emasculated the Fed of New York, destroyed all their surveillance capabilities, and took everything to Washington. This is the result, Jack.
And now, finally, Mr. Vladimir Zelensky has somebody he'd like you to meet, who can help explain why it is that Silicon Valley Bank is going down the tubes, why it is that this global financial change is underway, and what the implications are for it. Let's see who Vladimir has for us to meet.
Honor to meet you. You're very welcome.
It's Janet Yellen.
Very much, dear Minister, your team, Ambassador. You're very welcome. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. As Vladimir says, thank you very, very much for all the money. All of the money. It's been just wonderful. And where is Janet getting all the money? Well, she's getting it because she can just print it at zero cost. Ain't it useful? But now the credit card's maxed out. Now the chickens are coming home to roost on the zero cost. Now the rest of the world is broken free. And it's no longer loads and loads of money around to start wars, because now you've got to pay for everything, you can't just show up with a load of printed stuff instead. You've got to come up with the actual dough for all this stuff. Being the world's global reserve currency means that you can actually invade other nations and get them to pay for the cost of it themselves. You don't actually have to come up with the money at all. You can just print it off and then offload the cost onto the rest of the planet. Well, hey, that's over, as I pointed out in my last video. Before, I had a 2-week break from YouTube imposed by getting a second strike, which puts me 1 strike away from channel deletion. But the last video I did before the 2-week strike, I'm back now, was about the gold Brics, because the Brics and this alternative that everyone's breaking away from, the G7 Anglo-American bankster gangsters, are going gold because they're tired of the printed dollar being used to start wars wherever you want. And so, as I say, militarily in the Ukraine, geopolitically in terms of the shift away from their control, and financially in terms of the implosion of their credit card based system, the New World Order is reaching the end of its rope. And that makes me very happy. Viewers are advised to fasten their seatbelts, as we may experience some turbulence in the months ahead as these financial and geopolitical issues play out. But I'll be here to bring you the latest on it all, assuming that YouTube don't pull the plug on me. In case they do, we've got fintondone.com where you can go to find out where I am. You can also join us in the fintondone.com/WhatsApp group, which they haven't figured out a way of censoring yet. And that way I can get to you when I'm blocked on YouTube. But of course, my Rumble and Odysee channels are still working, and Uncensored. And I'll be following up with material in the days ahead. A news roundup of other stuff I haven't been able to cover during the couple of weeks while I was relaxing in YouTube jail, tied to some kind of chair, strapped down and forced to listen to old recordings of Joe Biden speeches. Oh my God, but there you go, you just got to do it, don't you? But I will be back with a news roundup and also a special feature on Jordan Peterson, the closet neocon, and hope you can join me for that. In the meantime, thanks for your comments and look forward to your company again. For breakfornews.com, this has been Fintan Dunn reporting. See you soon.